What's up? Welcome back to another edition of Dragonstorm, Ancient Myths, Legends, and Lore. Didn't mess it up. Could have, but I didn't. Welcome back. So, this is kind of a follow-up episode a little bit. There's a few things we didn't get to discuss in the last episode about the Yeti and Bigfoot. So, Tony had a few things he wanted to talk about, so we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to get into Nessie, Loch Ness, which is a really interesting subject. I'm not sure who's familiar with that, but we will get familiar with that in a second. But before we do that, Tony wanted to talk about our contest riddle for the month. Tony, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, so we've showed it a few times now. It's still on the tooth, the Spinosaur tooth, and you have until the 26th to answer the riddle. And I believe we're going to have a call in a minute by Alexander Storm, who is traveling but is going to once again call in and grace us with his vocal and hopefully visual presence this time, and give everybody the riddle. So, and I see my system lighting up, so we'll take that call now.
C12, this is C20, message over.
Greetings! This is Alexander Storm with this month's riddle. Perhaps you have what it takes to solve it? Here we go. I am a shadowy vision of the world that was. A pool full of night, freezing nature's laws. A pit full of time, filled with bones and claws. An inescapable fate for those who wandered my shores. Good luck.
Excellent. Thank you, Alexander. It was great to hear from you. The only other thing I wanted to announce on this episode was something new we're going to be adding into the design, and you may have already seen it in this episode. It's a QR code that if you scan, it will take you to a website that will provide you with, whether it be further reading on the topic we're discussing, it'll be images and video and things like that may be too big or too much to put into the short show, but that really may,
enhance the experience.
Enhance the experience, yeah. And we'll keep updating the sites too. So, like, let's say for the Bigfoot site, if some new evidence comes out or some new pictures or things like that, we'll throw them up there. So it'll be a compendium that'll keep getting updated on that particular topic. So it'll be something good that they can always refer to. Okay.
I personally think that is super cool, and so essentially, you guys, to the viewers, you can click that QR code, use your phone to scan it, whatever, and it'll take you to like a page where you can read about the topic that we've been discussing and all the research and the various links and stuff. So you can dive further into the subject, because in a 30-40-minute show, you can't go deep into but because he does deep into research, he's going to now take that research, put it somewhere, so you can just scan a code, bam, go right to it and read about it, research it. Come on, who does that? I mean, only Ancient Myths, Legends, and Lore, but that's us, and we're doing it to the next level. So,
yeah,
getting back to the subject of, by the way, I sent you the picture of the foot that my wife, I don't know if you saw it, but it's hard to make out, but maybe you can put it in here, I'll send it. That's pretty interesting. But now, the ancient myth of Yeti, it's basically, I think it starts in like Nepal, Mongolia, Siberia, and it's their version of Bigfoot. And keep in mind, this is probably, well, not probably, it is by far the most remote area on the planet, is Siberia, Eastern Russia. There's massive, there's literally thousands of miles of really nothing but natives, like Indians, and that's it. And so in that particular part of the world, if there was going to be a hidden species, humanoid or whatever, aka Yeti, I think that's where the best chance of finding one would be. But what say your research, Tony?
Yeah, the research regarding the Yeti was very interesting, and it really is different from from the United States or from the northern continent here, where it is a much more aggressive, much more all the legends regarding the Yeti have to do with assaults or attacks on humans or on livestock. And it really is a completely different type of an approach to the legend than Sasquatch. It is of course of the same size and appearance and stuff like that, but that's really where it differentiates.
Aren't they white though? Aren't they white in appearance?
They do say white, gray. There has been brown, but I guess it's a different kind of a brown, and a lot of it may be a camouflaging kind of an approach to their coat. So they may molt and they may change colors depending on what the season is. Because there are parts in Nepal, and everybody thinks it's very cold there, but you come down the mountain and it's 90 degrees. You go up the mountain, it's 20 degrees. So it does fluctuate.
They have a summer and a winter like everybody else. So I mean,
sure.
Makes sense.
The really interesting thing from the research about the Yeti, and I don't want to beat the topic to death, was the Nazis' involvement in the 30s and 40s regarding trying to find the Yeti. Now we know from previous programs and from discussing it that the Hitler and the Nazis were very interested in anything to do with the occult, anything that they thought was really able to pass some form of power, whether it be a holy or a religious power to them, or otherwise supernatural. Right. And what Hitler did through Himmler was he went to Nepal, and they rounded up the Sherpas, which are the livestock. They care for the livestock in Nepal, and they set up all these teams. I think there was something between 12 and 13 different teams, and they were equipped with scientists and soldiers from the Nazis, and they sent them out all over the region. To collect both stories from the local villages and to try to ascertain and capture the Yeti. The belief was that out of all of the types of this type of an animal or beast, he was the most suited to what the Nazis represented. They believed that he represented the beginning of the Aryan race and possibly the link to the Aryan race. And they were very, very interested in finding this, and they spent a lot of time and money that really I've never really heard anything about before doing the research, but it was a big project for the Nazis amongst their supernatural and holy relic searching. And one of the things that they have said that they had were able to obtain was the scalp or the top of the skull from a Yeti. And there are actually some photos that I'm going to put up here that people will see, and they can decide for themselves. But that also ties in with the story that I told on the last episode regarding Jimmy Stewart, and that Jimmy Stewart was actually acting as a spy in that region for the United States or for England. And there seems to be a lot of governmental interaction regarding this Yeti legend. So you have, I believe, probably from what I was reading, that the United States, were probably, and maybe it was the impetus was the Nazis looking for it, were involved with doing these searches and trying to locate the Yeti at the same time. And I thought that was really interesting. It's not something you usually associate with the legend of Bigfoot, which is, in and of itself, usually a lighthearted discussion. But this was very serious to both sides, I think.
It'd be interesting to see the Nazi files on the precursor, what led them to believe that this was worth time and resources,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there must have been something there. They must have presented it some way, like you're saying, that really got them involved. And I'm thinking of it from a super soldier standpoint. Back then it was a dream, I'm sure, to be able to get a soldier who they could train and send into battle that was unstoppable from hand-to-hand combat. It's not like it is today.
It could survive extreme conditions. You know what I'm saying? Sure. I think
presumably without fire. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they were looking at the Yetis like maybe this is an evolutionary anomaly of humanity, who's just this badass monster. Like if we could somehow crossbreed, and create soldiers that are like this, who knows?
Sure.
Take over the world. That's crazy.
And being white, obviously superior to that ghetto Sasquatch out west.
I didn't know you were saying that first. I'm like, what the hell is this?
That was my Nazi voice. Sorry.
That's Nazi. Well, that's fascinating. Was there anything else? Or that
no, that was it. I just wanted to throw that in. I don't want to detract from Nessie. Nessie deserves its own show, so I just wanted to throw that last part in.
Don't know who Nessie is. A very, very famous loch in Scotland, I believe. And it's the thing is, a lot of people don't even know what a loch is. All right, so a loch is it's a body of water, that flows between other bodies of water. And then, like, if you've ever heard, I live by the Sioux locks, and what they do is they flood the loch. A boat comes in, but they got to get it up to this next level, so they flood the loch. They lift it up. The boat. That's a different kind of loch. This loch, what we're talking about, is in Scotland. It's pretty long. I'll let you get into the details. But it's a pretty big body of water, and over the years, I I'd say hundreds of people have seen what they describe as a monster, right? And so he'll pipe in some of the images. Some of them are like, that's probably a log. It could be a muskrat. If you do the camera just right, if you angle it just right with the light just right, it could be a beaver. It could be whatever. But some of these images are like, wait a minute, man. Like, that, and then you see the wake of the water behind it. So this thing is moving. It's a photograph of something from hundreds of yards away. It's moving. It's got its head up, and there are not megalodons, but there's a particular dinosaur that basically what is described.
Plesiosaur, I believe.
Tony will get into that in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Is a particular dinosaur that, and just for the record, I'll set the stage and he can go. But we are finding species in the ocean all the time that we didn't know existed. All the time, it's pretty common. I would wager dozens, if not hundreds, every year we find a species like, whoa. And there are even large species of animals that we find in the ocean like, whoa, we've never found one of these before. So it's not to say something like that could be left over from the Jurassic period, hiding in a very large, long, deep lake. Nobody's there. What do you think about that, Tony? And tell us the facts.
Yeah, so first of all, I was surprised to find it is the largest body of water in Great Britain. And that's because it's only 22 square miles, but it is extremely deep. It's 800 feet deep, which is really, really deep. It's deep, dark water.
For fresh water, that's very deep.
Yeah. So
149 fathoms, yeah.
Yeah. Man, that's down there. And it really is an ideal location for a throwback creature to exist. Yeah, and I was thinking about it. If something was going to survive, an extinction level event, it would be something that probably lives in the water, right? Because land animals are going to get wiped pretty much. So something that lives in the water that is able to sustain itself, possibly back and forth between, being a carnivore and an herbivore or something along those lines. And it's the perfect trap. And there's really one interesting part of the water too. It's called a thermal vortex, which I had never really heard about before. I think they had something on the movie Meg about it. That was actually the way that they said the megalodon actually got trapped underneath this heat vortex. But Loch Ness actually has one. And what it is, and I'm going to put up graphics for it. It's kind of like a bowl shaped like this. So imagine it's a stone basin, pretty much, with this water in it that goes so deep. The temperature fluctuations at a certain point are trapped. So in other words, there's almost freezing water below a certain level that cannot rise any higher. So they're saying due to that, plus the depth of the water, it's very difficult to send a diver down there of any kind. So the water is extremely inhospitable for humans to explore. We have had cameras sent down, which we'll get into, but the thing that I remember from my childhood was that one Bigfoot little video snippet and that one shot of Loch Ness. It was taken out in the 1930s. And everyone was very excited about things, and we used to always talk about them. They were, without social media and computers, it was our big link to the unknown, those two images. And I should start off the episode by saying it was proven to be a forgery, a hoax, just a couple of years ago. Through the ability of the computers to do close-up analysis and restabilizing and all those kind of things, they were able to see what appeared to be a string pulling what they believe is a bunch of toy submarines with some dinosaur contraption or whatever on it. So that image that we thought was real all those years was fake, and it really does a disservice to the legend itself, because the legend is very, very old. We have our first report of it was by a monk. And that was all the way back in 565 AD. So back in 565 AD, there was a monk visiting the area, and he attended a funeral of the local tribes. And they told him that the man that they were burying was attacked on the shore by a creature, and he was mauled and ripped apart, and they were burying him. The monk went down, this is the legend, that he went down to the shore and called the creature, and the creature, came to him from being summoned, and he used some prayers and some words, and he sent it away. And then the legend was that for several hundred years there was no spottings or incidences relating to the Loch Ness Monster, but it does go back that far. And then we have a complete rash of spottings from the 1930s, which we don't really have. There's a lot of written stuff from before that, but they believe that the amount of sightings in this century or the last 100 years is in the thousands. That thousands of people have seen something.
Yeah. It's a pretty rural area, though, right? It's not very populated. So I mean,
well, people come to visit the Loch Ness Monster. So you do get a lot of people that way. But I have to say, from what I saw, it seemed to be a pretty even mix between locals and between tourists or investigators. So and it's every type of person, every type of walk of life. All have a very similar type of story.
When a reputable law enforcement officer, Loch Ness water bailiff Alex Campbell, spotted the monster multiple times.
What's the most you've ever seen of it at any one sighting?
The best view I ever had was the very first. I saw the head, the neck, and the huge body, which I'd say was about 30 feet long. And the skin was exactly like that of an elephant, wrinkly, tough-looking.
And I think most investigators believe there is something there. It's unfortunate that picture, threw such a shadow over the whole legend. But again, it goes back to the early settlers there talking about this, having stories about it. And now we've come so far as to have sonar images. I'm going to probably post a timeline because there are some really interesting ones along the way. Of course, you're not going to post 1,000 different ones.
Do you think biologically, Bill, this question for you two, for both, and we get into like that, because I've watched whole specials on this stuff because I'm a nerd like that. You guys probably are too. But like biologically, I think, this is just my opinion, my belief, that if you look at it could be a massive creature, a dinosaur type creature based on the legends of how it's shaped. There is a dinosaur monstrous creature that looked just like the description of Nessie. But by the way, just for the record, is the description of this beast in Loch Ness that people were describing 500 years ago, 400 years ago, even 100 years ago. The people who are given this description had no idea that there was a creature that we found now, fossils of, that actually looked exactly like this creature, size and look of it. And I had almost like paddles of arms. So the people who were making the claims that they saw it didn't know that there actually was a real creature that looked like that throughout history, which brings you to think, well, wait a minute, if they didn't know, but they're describing it exactly. Now, the other thing is, biologically, if you look at some of the biggest creatures in the world, whales, humpback whales, and some of these other whales, they eat phytoplankton and like little shrimps and things like that. So they filter out these little, almost microscopic shrimps out of the water. These gigantic creatures, right? They come up, and you almost can't even see what they're eating. So a giant creature could essentially, if it was trapped in there, maybe it got trapped in there. Maybe there's a breeding population because they like the environment in there, wherever the water, the hydrostrata, the water temperature was right, the oxygen levels. I don't know. But if there's a form of like plankton or something that lives in fish, could be fish. Obviously, there's probably massive schools of fish in that lake, like alewife type fish, where they call it biomass here in Michigan. But there's probably millions of pounds of fish. And if you had a breeding population of this creature, which wouldn't be many, you might have 10 of them. And if they keep breeding, you can keep it going. They could eat off this biomass or this plankton or whatever, and they could stay in this place indefinitely. Do you think that's a possibility, Bill and Tony?
I'd say plankton, no, it's not built like that. It's got sharp teeth. It's got that little head. If you look at how a whale's built, it's built to move and take in tons of stuff. So no, but and the plesiosaurus, while it does look like all these depictions, it would eat fish. And my understanding is the size, these things are like 43 feet long back in the day, that there would not be enough fish to sustain it indefinitely like we're talking. Also, that animal was known to be extinct 69 million years ago. Loch Ness has only been around about 10,000 years. So how would it get there unless there's some kind of underground tunnel network?
Okay, now that's what I want to talk about after. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Okay, let me just say my argument to that. So first, a 22-mile, 800-foot deep body of water actually could have a lot of, like, you'd be shocked. Fish like minnow type smell alewives, they earn massive schools of hundreds of thousands of them. So I think it could sustain about 22 miles. It's a lot of water, 800 feet deep, 22 miles long. But you said it's 69 million. So that what they know of 69 million years ago, but we've also found creatures that we thought were extinct that have recently popped up, and we were like, whoa, we thought these were extinct. Even megalodon is a big thing. We can get into another show. But what I'm saying is, we always are finding creatures we thought were extinct all the time, and they're like, whoa, somebody found one, somebody caught one, somebody got it in net or whatever.
But this ain't a dodo bear. This is a 49-foot beast.
But it's in 800 feet of water and not on an island, like a remote tropical island like the dodo bird. It can't go anywhere. And this creature may have been able to get in and out of the loch at the time. I don't know how old the loch is. The legend may go back. I don't know. But they
say the loch's like 10,000 years old.
Yeah, so let's get into this part of it then. So, as we're doing all this research, I find that there is a very similar creature in a lake in Sweden. And in Sweden, it's called the Great Lake Monster. And it first came about in the 11th century. The Vikings left this rune stone, which is still there to this day in the town, called the Froso rune stone. And it is actually the image of a dragon, much like the one, or dragon or sea serpent, much like the way that people are describing it. And so that was back in the 11th century. Now, both this lake in Sweden, which I'll put up the name, I'm not even going to try to do it. It's Astrason, probably saying it wrong. Both this and Loch Ness are able to get out to the North Sea. I was always under the impression that it was landlocked. It is not landlocked. It does make its way to the North Sea, and so does the lake in Sweden make its way to the North Sea. So I think it's a very interesting, one of you had just mentioned about a breeding ground. So whatever the life cycle is of this creature, it would appear that it does show up in a cyclic pattern where you won't see it for 2, 3, 4 decades, and then all of a sudden you see a whole bunch of people reporting that they see it. In the reverse, at the opposite times, you'll hear about the reports. So in other words, if I take the chronologies from both locations, when you see it in Sweden, you don't see it. Nobody's got a report of it in Loch Ness. When you got it in Loch Ness, nobody's got a report of it in Sweden. So I think there could actually be one and the same group of creatures. Maybe it's, there's got to be more than one.
Maybe they're like salmon. They spawn. This is really, I hate to interrupt, but salmon go out into the ocean for several years, then they all come back and they spawn in fresh water. Perhaps this species of animal, it only comes back to spawn, and they're only there for a short time to breed a baby, a year, 6 months. They go back out in the ocean for 10 years. They come back or into the loch. So maybe it's like does something like that, like a spawn.
Sure. I think that's.
I think the plesiosaur only was in saltwater, but they found out later they found a bunch of bones and teeth and skeletons in freshwater areas. So now they believe, that's science for you. But now they believe it spent at least some of the time, maybe most of the time, in freshwater. But you're right, maybe it went back. There's one account a long time ago when I was a little kid and I'd read books about this. I couldn't find this anywhere, but there is an account where a guy was riding by on a motorcycle and claimed that he damn near wrecked into one. And it was crossing the street, like flipping around and crossing the street, like not in a graceful way, And he kind of ditched his motorcycle. So, but that's the only one I can think of that's exactly like that.
Right. That was 1994. That was in 1990. No, that's older than that. 1954.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what he said. He said it was out of the water, moving across his pathway. Was able to see it had short, stubby legs, and was able to see it then, go back into the into Loch Ness, depending on if we're thinking that it's this type of a situation. And I got to tell you, I think this adds a lot more credence to the theory and to the legend. You have an animal following patterns and ideas that we can attribute to other real animals that we know, right. Just like you said with the salmon. So I think that there's a real possibility that that this is some form of and there's a population of them, and we're seeing them on a cyclic period of time in different bodies of water. There's also footage, which I'm going to put up here, of what very, very much, and I know when you guys see it, you're going to agree, looks like the debris of a carcass at the bottom of Loch Ness, which if there's a breeding population, that some of them are going to pass away at sometimes. And this really, really does look like what people have described, and it's all the way at the bottom. It's not like, anybody was able to put anything down there. And our viewers can look at it and make a decision for themselves. But if there is a carcass down there that is deteriorating, the water is very cold, but eventually it is going to completely deteriorate from the fish and stuff. Right, but whether we're talking about a year or 4 years or 5 years, we're not talking about thousands of years. It's not something that's old like that.
No, but the thing is, I don't think they like live there year round. But I'm thinking they come in, maybe this is the perfect environment for them to give their babies. There's less danger. Let's face it. There's not killer sharks. There's not killer whales. You know what I'm saying? There's all these other dangers in the ocean. They can bring it in a lock. It's quiet. There's a food source. I'm sure they can stay in there and raise their young from birth to a year or 6 months, maybe however long they do it. Then they go back out in the ocean, and there's so many things out in the ocean, and that we're finding all the time that we don't know about. I just feel like who knows? And this creature may be able to get out and breathe. It could, if you look at the evolutionary process, the animals left the water and went up under the ground for food, or however God did it. I'm not sure. But whatever the case is, this animal may get out of the water and get on the ground, and they look for food. Maybe that's where he rears his children. I don't know. But we don't know. That's the main thing I'm getting at, I guess, is I think we know so much because we have Google and we have research and we have this.
Right.
We don't know that much. To be perfectly honest, God is up there giggling. Like, you think you know. You don't know nothing, man. So that's why my mind, I'm a writer, you're a writer, everybody here has an imagination, and you think, geez, really, we don't know that much. This all could be possibility. But I will reference the one time they did do a thing where they went across the lake back and forth with like a LiDAR type of radar, and they didn't find anything. But they also did conclude that they were unable to get all of the whole lake or loch, right?
Right.
Yeah, I didn't see a full lake scan. I saw a couple of different things. Yeah, but one of them did catch that, which is another famous image, which we'll put up, is of the flipper. Which really looks like an oversized, whether it be, a dinosaur or a reptilian type of a flipper. And I think that's a very clear image, too. You have the bubbles of water and air around it as if it was moving through the water, the rush of water around it. And then you have another really, really interesting video, which is from, I believe it's the 94 one, but I'll make sure when I post it, which is a gentleman filmed from up on the shore, which is a really great shot of just below the surface, a long cylindrical animal, which the scientists and biologists who have looked at it have agreed it is an animal. And I think it was about 15 or 20 feet long. It was moving about 6 miles an hour right below the surface of the water. Animal, which the scientists and biologists who have looked at it have agreed it is an animal. And I think it was about 15 or 20 feet long. It was moving about 6 miles an hour right below the surface of the water.
I saw the monster at 10 minutes to 10 on the 26th of May 2007 during the morning I'd been doing hydrophonic research on the loch. At the evening I decided to go up to the lay-by, which had a good commanding view of the loch, about 70 foot above the surface. This was my 4th visit up to the loch, and I hadn't actually got anything concrete, evidence of something mysterious. I'd been there for a few hours, and then suddenly I saw something coming towards me. I immediately reached over the back seat and grabbed my camcorder. I dashed out, slammed the door, and then suddenly I realised that's not what you're supposed to do. I've read that if you see a potential monster, don't slam the door, because that'll frighten it. So I then ran down to the edge of the lay-by and realised it's disappeared. Where's it gone? And then suddenly I saw it over to the right, and immediately I got the camcorder and zoomed into its position. For the next 2.5 minutes, I was privileged to one of the most amazing sights I've ever seen. This thing was like bubbling along the waves. At no point did it break through the surface of the streamlined water flow.
If it's a long cylindrical animal,
I'd read it somewhere that if you ever get a sighting of something like this, you should zoom in and out so that the people that analyse the footage can always then estimate the size of whatever the creature was, and at the same time you can prove it's not like a fake because you're seeing it in context. It was certainly going at speed into the waves. It wasn't some sort of log. This was a creature that had energy, it had power, it was thrusting through the waves. This is probably the best footage up to this time of the so-called Loch Ness Monster. I realised this was a turning point in the history of the Loch Ness Monster.
And again, there's something great with this theory, because if it's a population of these animals and they're coming back here to breed, you would also have different size animals. Right? So we have some people who are saying, oh, it was 40 feet long or 30 feet long, but then you have other people saying it was only 15 feet long. That fits perfectly with this theory then, right? We have different size animals at different stages in their life.
Yeah, and maybe even the young ones, they might be born there and they're 5 feet, they leave, they come back and they're 8 feet, because like steelhead are a perfect example. It's a rainbow trout that's born in the river, it leaves the river, it comes back in the spring, it's every year it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it comes back, and its lifespan is about 6, 7, 8 years. They can come back 30 pounds. But they come back the first year and they're only 15 inches. You know what I'm saying? Second year, they're 20 inches and they're 5 pounds. The 30. So maybe this is what they do. They come back and forth to try and rear babies or mate. Maybe that's a mating ground where they go to meet and mate. Who knows?
Do we know when they scanned the lake, was it at a time when there was a lot of sightings, or did they just finally get funding together and start scanning the lake?
I'm not sure. I'll check that. Yeah, I'll check that. There's been a couple of, and I'll post some of the videos. You've got one sonar that was done by a ship, and this is another really interesting one. It picked up all the way down. This was 1955, 479 feet below the surface, directly below the vessel, was a large mass moving in sync with the vessel. And it did this for 2,600 feet before it disappeared. So for 2,600 feet, and the boat captain maneuvered the boat. The boat captain says he did some of this stuff, moved around a little bit.
How deep was it?
And it was down. So it was in the deep part of the water, and the sonar showed that the creature that was, or whatever it was, following and mimicking the boat's movements was 479 feet down. So over halfway down.
Yeah, because certain fish can't go that deep, and because there's swim bladder and things like that. The pressure at 500 feet down, there's a massive amount of pressure. So I mean, but anyways, lots of creatures can survive in that. But what the hell could be moving 2,000 feet, paralleling at 500 feet? Explain that. I mean, I guess there are sharks in the water. There are orcas. I don't think orcas go that far. I don't think any mammalian animal like whales can go that deep. They don't go that deep because they drown. You know, they gotta go up.
Not a freshwater lake.
Right, they're the only. If you think about it, right? Dolphins and things like that are really the only ones that I think are intelligent enough, though, in the water to do a maneuver like this. I don't think there's any non-mammals that interact with ships when they come out there, like the whales do, or the dolphins or the porpoises. They're the only sea creatures that actually do this type of thing. I don't think a shark, unless it's track, is going to do this kind of mirroring of your movement.
Or out of curiosity, like a porpoise or something, like a whale. They're like, this is cool. This is curious of what's up there. But here's the thing: with a whale, you would have saw it breach at some point. It hasn't come up for air. So if it's down at 500 feet, it could follow you for 2,000 feet, but you'd be going, okay, it's going to come up. You see it go back down. You see it come up and breathe. You know, if they never came up, and like you said, sharks just don't follow boats. They're not that smart. So what do we have down there? And if that's a real study, like a real thing, in my opinion, I feel like that right there kind of sums it up. And I think,
I don't know how long those plesiosaurs lived. I do know that I don't believe they were gilled. So they said it would have to come up frequently for air if it was in the loch.
Right.
Really? So
20, 30 times a day.
Maybe this animal is gilled.
Maybe. 60 million years, a lot can happen.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Evolution.
Or it can hold a lot of air. I mean, whales go down. Whales can go down. I don't know the actual figures, but they can go down for like an hour or two, right? Yeah.
A couple hours.
Yeah, but even then, you got to come up. There's 24 hours in the day.
I think it wasn't breathing. If it was a mammal and it was breathing air, it would, it'd have to come up.
Yeah, but you could just come up. Just your little head could pop up. You don't have to come up, and
just stick its nostrils right out of the water.
Yeah, you could just glide,
Now, nobody
like an alligator.
Unless you had cameras on the whole loch all the time, which nobody does. I mean, it could just pop up, gulp air, and be done. It's very, very possible. I mean, who knows?
Sure.
Hey, Tony, have you seen that drone footage from 22 where that's up on the beach?
Yeah, I got a bunch of different clips, and we'll run them all as we talk through each one of them. But some of them are obviously a hoax. Others are questionable, and some of them are just, I think, really unexplainable. Especially the ones that fall right in the middle of some stuff now, and the one that ended up being a hoax. Before there was a lot of technology to really. I mean, somebody can do all this crazy stuff now.
AI now can make it.
AI, anything can be done. So I think that the really impressive ones are like the ones from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, which just seem to be camcorder footage or a regular photograph from filmed cameras. And they really do. The only species that was called into question a couple of times by scientists was there are very large sturgeon in that water. And they have a very hard-shelled, armored back that almost looks like humps. It's kind of a wavy back, and they're saying that if there's a species of sturgeon, it still would be an unknown species, and it doesn't coincide with the long neck that so many people have reported on. But as far as breaking the water, there could be a sturgeon that is 15 or 20 feet long. Again, other people who are saying that's not a viable argument are saying that we haven't seen any remains of a fish that big that has been living in the water, and it couldn't live indefinitely, just like we said about the carcass from whatever the Nessie type creature is. And they feel like they would find some remnants. There would be no predator in the water that could eat that. So when it died, there would be, they'd pop up every once in a while. And there's nothing of that size in the sturgeon family that's presented itself from what I could read.
Plus, not all the eyewitnesses saw it in the water. There's a family that saw it right up on shore. The dad wasn't there yet. The kids were down with the mom playing on the beach, and this thing came right up, and they were just like right there, not afraid of it, interacting and stuff. And the dad was coming down with the cooler or something. It's like, wow, loses his mind and starts screaming and yelling and get away from it, And they said then it took off. They got a real good look at it, and the whole family swears they saw it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, there's a ton of those. There's a ton of reports like that where people
believe it, man. I mean, what do you think, guys? In closing, tell me. In my opinion, I think there is a very high probability that there is an animal that uses those type of locks. They like the fresh water for breeding or whatever it is, spawning, whatever they do, and they're in and out, and they're hard to lock down. They're out in the ocean. You're talking, I mean, millions of square miles of ocean that we don't know nothing. We float over it, and we don't know the heck's down there, and so it could be very well a migratory place, and it just so happens because there are some humans there, and it is a place that goes to spawn, migrate, whatever. We get a glimpse of it every now and then. Somebody sees it, and that's why we have this legend that dates back 1,500 years or whatever. And I think it's very possible. I mean, call me a dreamer and a imaginary in my imagination, but what do you guys think?
I think with St. Columba back in 596 or whatever it was prevalent to have sea monsters in every story back then. So I'd take that one with a grain of salt. But also, if everybody that saw it had some connection to the lock, like if everybody that owned a T-shirt shop around there saw it, I'd be skeptical. But it's people that are visiting. There's people that have nothing to gain. Like I said, an entire family gets their story straight and goes on the news. It doesn't ring like a hoax to me. It's just, it's not something you usually see. So there's something there, there's something. Yeah. And you're going to talk about the caves, Tony. I think that's a compelling aspect of this.
Sure. There's and I just wanted to mention there's a bunch of cold water lakes up there, and the only one that I grabbed all the data on was in Canada. There's a creature called Ogopogo, and it's the same type of creature. It looks just like Nessie, and it's the same period of time that people in Canada have been reporting in British Columbia that this creature is there. And again, this lake has access out into the, I guess it would be the Atlantic at that point.
Pacific.
The Pacific, yes, from British Columbia. Okay, there you go. Terrible
Northern
geography. But so I didn't go any further than that just because of time. But I imagine that if we really looked into some of the different regions around the whole northern hemisphere, a lot of these lakes would have these legends about it, and probably. If you graph this, and it's funny because one scientist was saying nobody's gone and did a survey and then taken all the data and graphed the data for those absent periods. So you've got everybody that has witnessed it in Canada. I don't have any witnesses from that time period in Sweden or in Loch Ness or wherever the other ones have been cited. So I mean, it's really a great way to see. You could actually track the migratory pathway of these creatures, and then you might be able to predict where they're going to be at certain times, and that would probably make a very good argument for setting up an expedition and seeing if you can try to track it down at the right location at the right time. There may be a whole slew of them in this one location at that time.
Oh my goodness, that's us, man. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We need to get some funding, bro. Like, we need to get some pork in the next bill. That's the type of stuff we get in the bill. Like, listen, we are running a Nessie expedition. Here's the data. We think they're going to be in British Columbia, or then fund us. We'll go out there, camp out, set up cameras, and have a good old time, and do some salmon fishing while we're there. So I think I think it's legit, bro. I think the arrogance of the human arrogance likes to think we know everything, right? That's just nature. That's what we do. We're smart. We know stuff. We research. We read stuff. Oh, we know. There's no way. If it's there, we know it. No, we don't. We know. And there's a creature out there swimming the fathoms of the ocean. I mean, it's almost unlimited. What do they say we know? We know like 5% of the ocean. Like, we charted it. We know like 5%. So 95% of the ocean, which makes up 70% of the world, is uncharted. We know nothing about it, and we're like, we know what's there. No, we don't know what's there, and it very well could be a creature like Loch Ness out there. And if I had to put bet money on it, I would bet. I would be willing to bet there's something out there. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I agree. And all those large bodies are all connected too, so it's really an open passageway all around the planet.
The whole
I mean,
world.
think about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you have a population of 20 or 30 creatures that are able to move anywhere on the globe and as deep as they want at any time, unless you get a tracker on those suckers, you're not, you know what I mean? You're not finding them probably. Unless you can track their patterns. If they have a pattern, that would be the only way to try to track them.
And they do, because all animals have a pattern. Like every animal has a migratory or a reproductive pattern. Everyone, even humans, we all do the same. So especially like primitive animals, they have a migration. They have a certain climates they go to at a certain time of year. A certain. I can tell you, I can walk down a stream in a river, a beautiful stream in a river, trout fishing. I've done this with friends, and they're casting here, and they're casting there. I go, stop casting there, bro. Stop. Why? I'm like, this is a good river. I said, there's not going to be a trout there. And they're like, what do you mean there won't be a trout there? I'm like, I'm telling you, I know how trout think. They look at me crazy. How do you know how trout think? Well, because I got thousands of hours on the river. I've casted everywhere, and I know where you catch them and you don't catch them. I could walk down a river and go, okay, stop now. You see that log right there with the current's flowing right? And I put your worm right there. I guarantee you in the first cast you'll catch a trout. They're like, yeah, this is pretty arrogant. Bang, first cast, boom. You're like, you're right. Here's the thing. That the trout think a certain way. They like a certain current. They like a certain depth. They like a certain structure. They like a certain temperature. They like certain things. Now, if you can figure out what that creature likes, those certain things likes, you'll be able to track them down and figure out where one is and get there ahead of time. I'm just saying.
Sure. I agree.
Just to get a little sci-fi, though, there's always that interdimensional part, like they say with the Bigfoot and stuff, Yeah. And there's been cases where humans are saying like they were walking across the bridge, I think at Versailles, and these two ladies swear they were walking across the bridge, and when they crossed, they were back in time with Marie Antoinette times. Everybody was dressed different. Everything looked different. And then it just kind of morphed back into their time. And they were accredited people that swore this happened. What if once in a while they just hit an anomaly in a prehistoric thing crosses over, And then it's sucked back into its time somehow.
I'm not writing that out either, man. I think there's different dimensions.
It's always there.
There's always the supernatural.
Well, that's what Tesla was working on, right? The ability to do that. So maybe it happens naturally. Actually, that was that, and we'll talk about it on one of the programs. That episode that I sent you guys about the ability to pass through the holes and the relation to black holes. Remember that one where I sent you, where they have the false doors carved into the walls, and they say that the tribes pass through there. I'd like to do a lot more research on that. That's very interesting. And that goes along with exactly what you're talking about, Bill. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to do some talking about that, about things that are supernatural. What do you want to talk about next? Since we've got to wrap this up, what do you think's coming next? What do you want to talk about?
I'm going to leave it to you guys. I mean, I know you wanted to go to South America, so maybe something in South America or
aliens. We could talk about aliens.
There's also the Middle Earth.
Middle Earth.
Well, Tony sent us a video about Middle Earth. Remember?
Tolkien's Middle Earth or other Middle Earth?
Well, the other Middle Earth, yeah.
What do you think about aliens? I think there's a lot of people debate over if aliens are real. There's a lot of facts, and there's a lot of data. There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of first-hand testimony. That could be something that would really attract an audience. I think maybe you want to talk about. You want to do that?
Yeah.
I'd like to do some research on because I know there's a lot of stuff out there, even in the Bible. I'd like to do some research on some ancient accounts that could be aliens. Yeah.
Okay. There's a guy who was on Joe Rogan, I believe it was, and so we've got to reach that. I'll try to find that video. Joe Rogan interviews NASA dude at the Area 51 who basically says he worked on an alien ship. They hired him to do it, and the guy that he replaced died trying to reverse engineer some technology that they got from this alien ship. And this guy is like super smart. You can tell he ain't lying, like unless he's a super pathological and he has the ability to just like. I could not imagine somebody making anything like that. Not some NASA level intelligent, like super mastermind kind of guy. I'm telling you, man, this is what happened. So I'll try to find a video and we can talk about that and all the sightings and the things that people see and stuff, and we can debate and figure out if aliens are real or not. I tend to think they are, but we'll find out. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts.
I have some stories of my own for this one. So
all right, good, great, love it. So I guess that's it. Well, should we wrap it up?
Yeah.
All right, well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. God bless you. We appreciate you. You make your own decision. Is Loch Ness Monster real? Nessie real? Whatever. I'm leaning towards yes. We all agree. We think that something's out there. So you look at the data. Make sure to use our QR code. Scan it. I'm sure there'll be some cool information that'll reference the things we're talking about. So make sure to check that out. And God bless. We'll see you next week back here on Dragonstorm, Ancient Myths, Legends, and Lore. We'll be talking about aliens, it looks like. We're out.